Good morning, members of council and staff. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Thursday, September 12th to order. Mr. Clerk, if you could please do a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Electronic roll call is starting now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have quorum. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none online, Mr. Clerk? Seeing none. We'll move on to, we have no statutory public meetings. Good morning, members of council. The purpose of today's meeting is to consider the proposed 2025 property tax budget guideline. The recommended guideline is being brought to today's special Committee of the Whole meeting in alignment with the changes council approved in June of this year to the Annual Business Planning and Budget Process Report 2024-A-10. In addition to Report 2024-CAL 39 on the 2025 property tax guideline, today we'll have Elaine, Nancy, and Nicole will provide the committee with an overview of the proposed 2025 property tax guideline, including the various considerations underpinning the report's recommendations. We will also welcome our 3 delegates today on the guideline and look forward to hearing their perspectives. As part of the region's ongoing engagement efforts on the budget, staff will be hosting a budget town hall on October 10th at 6:30 p.m. This event provides an additional opportunity for residents to provide input and ask questions about the region's budget. As staff have indicated in the report, they are looking for council's direction in September on the specific property tax guideline for 2025. Timing of this direction is critical to assist staff with finalizing the 2025 budget submission for presentation to committee and council in December of this year. I look forward to today's discussions on the key initial stage of our 2025 regional budget process. So I'll go to our CIO to start today when you're ready.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Chair Henry and members of council. Nancy, Nicole, and I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the proposed guideline for 2025 and the various internal and external factors that have been considered in bringing this recommended guideline to committee and council for consideration. If we could just load this, thank you very much. As you will hear in our presentation, many of the pressures facing the region of Durham are ongoing and consistent with the pressures we faced in 2024. These are not unique to Durham and are faced by other peer municipalities across the province, especially those experiencing growth and with responsibilities for essential services, including social services. In developing the recommended guideline, we have carefully considered the need of our community and the increasing demands of our critical frontline services while balancing the impacts of property tax increases on our residents and businesses. Next slide, please. As you have read in the report, the recommended property tax increase cap for 2025 is 4.9% on the regional portion of the property tax bill. This represents an annual increase of approximately $163 for an average residential property owner. As the region is only 53% of the total property tax bill, the 4.9% translates to an approximate 2.6% increase on the overall tax bill. Included in this recommended guideline is 5.96% increase for regional departments and agencies. This translates to an increase of 2.72% on the regional portion of the property tax bill after assessment growth. The increase includes investments in transit, paramedic services, housing and homelessness supports, and other critical investments required to advance council's strategic priorities. We will discuss these forecasted investments in more detail in the coming slides. Also included in the recommended guideline is a 9.25% increase for Durham Region Police Services. This translates into an increase of 2.16% on the regional portion of the property tax bill, again after assessment growth. Nancy will provide additional details on Durham Regional Police Services' initial 2025 budget ask. Lastly, the recommended guideline includes a 2.5%, a lot of numbers, I do apologize, increase for conservation authorities plus or minus any current value assessment adjustments. This translates to an increase of 0.02% on the regional portion of the property tax bill and is consistent with previous year's guidelines. As you will have noted in the report, the recommended guideline is based on a projected net weighted assessment growth of 2%. As of the end of August, net weighted assessment growth is 1.26%, which is significantly lower than the net assessment growth realized at this time in 2023. Staff will continue to closely monitor assessment growth over the next 3 months, and any impacts in this will be noted in the 2025 budget. Staff continue to advocate for additional funding opportunities to advance the regional's priorities. Significant senior government investments in transit, housing, and homelessness supports is needed in order to advance a number of the region's critical infrastructure projects. Lastly, to achieve the recommended guideline, we will continue to draw significantly on reserves and reserve funds and development charges. Debt will also be strategically employed, resulting in debt payment obligations that Nancy will discuss further in the presentation. Next slide, please. There are 4 main drivers that are impacting the recommended guideline before you today, and these include base pressures. These pressures reflect the increased cost to provide the programs and services that we provided in 2024. They include the annualization of 2024 budget decisions and decisions approved in year, incremental debt servicing costs for debt approved in 2024, inflationary and contractual pressures, and in particular capital cost escalations. Together, these pressures total $36.6 million or 4.1%. Secondly, investments in critical frontline core services are including paramedic services, transit, and housing and homelessness supports, which will be addressed in subsequent slides. The third driver are the strategic investment pressures for DRPS and the region's strategic plan, which Nancy will also address in the coming slides. And lastly, there are a number of provincial and federal funding impacts and legislative and regulatory changes impacting many of our health and social service programs, police and conservation authorities that are further described in Section 10 of the guideline report. I would note that following the publication of the report, the region received confirmation that its 2025 Ontario Works Program delivery allocation will increase by approximately $500,000 from the 2024 funding levels. At this point, I will now turn it over to Nancy to provide an overview of the significant investments in the region's critical services that we are proposing. Oh, sorry, Nancy. Oh, Nicole, I apologize. I'm turning it over to Nicole.
It's all good. Thanks, Elaine. Good morning. So as Council's aware, the Paramedic Service Master Plan was approved in February of 2023 and highlighted the need for annual incremental increases in both provincial funding that is consistent and aligned with annual property tax increases. This was needed in order to address the service level delivery issues facing paramedic services. Annual increases in the provincial funding for paramedic services in both 2023 and 2024 have kept pace with the projections that were included in the strategy and have been aligned with regional property tax increases for those years as well. The region is optimistic that this will continue for 2025. Aligned with the 10-year strategy, the 2025 priorities for paramedic services include providing an additional 36 hours of paramedic services daily for 7 days a week. This increase in service is supported by an additional 14 new paramedics, 7 advanced care paramedics, and 7 primary care paramedics. Also, there's new full-time management and support staff positions needed to support the growth in 911 emergency response services, again aligned with the strategy. Capital investments to advance new paramedic response station as well as maintaining the region's existing stations as well. The region's portion of the recommended guideline before Council is projected to support is to support a $4.4 million increase, or 11.27% in the paramedic services budget. Overall, this translates to a 0.49% increase in the total property tax levy. Switching to transit, similar with paramedic services, as council approved a long-term investment plan for Durham Region Transit in February of 2023. Like paramedic, achievement of this strategy required significant increases in senior government funding for transit, along with incremental annual property tax increase. There were 4 main priorities identified in that strategy, including service enhancements and growth, fleet transition to zero greenhouse gas emission vehicles, investments in passenger amenities and infrastructure, and fare modernization. In bringing forward the guidelines, staff considered these 4 key priorities: the ridership growth that transit has experienced over the course of the last year, increased demands for transit service within our communities, and the impact and affordability of property tax increases on Durham residents and businesses. In light of these considerations, the region's portion of the recommended guideline before council is projected to support an increase of approximately $15.74 million, or 16.7% increase in the Durham Region Transit for budget for 2025. Overall, on the region's overall levy, this equates to about a 1.75% increase. In terms of housing and homelessness, investments in this area have been a key priority for regional council and the community. Since 2022, the region's investments in these program areas has increased by approximately 37.1%, or $22 million. In addition to continuing to provide investments in homelessness support and shelter programs, staff are looking to focus incremental investments in the region's rent supplement program for 2025. These investments are crucial to support residents in their transition from Beaverton Supportive Housing, Microhomes 1635 Dundas, and for other precariously housed individuals in order to have more permanent housing. With significant funding support from the federal and provincial governments, the region is looking to continue to advance the redevelopment of Christine Crescent, Malaga Road, 300 Ritson Road South, and Phase 2 of 1635 Dundas Street East. Senior government is critical to quickly advance these transformational housing projects, which are acutely needed in our community. Both these operating and capital investments will continue to build the region's supports along the housing continuum. I'll turn it over to Nancy to talk about other strategic investments.
Good morning, committee members. If I flip through to my correct starting point here. So in addition to the strategic investments in paramedic services, transit, and housing that Nicole's highlighted, this guideline includes a small provision for strategic investments to support other key priorities. Many of these are multi-year initiatives. They have been initiated in prior years and will continue to impact 2025 budget and moving forward. There are actually not a lot of brand new ones here. We're trying to make sure that we can continue the ones that we've already endeavored commencing. So this slide provides an overview of all of those particular items. I will highlight, for example, moving forward on the region's cybersecurity plan, and you received a recent presentation on that, and it's there's some pretty scary things going on in the world. It includes investing a projected additional $3 million in property tax funding for roads and bridge rehabilitation projects, and annual incremental investments in roads and bridges will be required over the 10-year forecast to address asset management requirements. And it includes advancing initiatives to support the region's climate change and climate action plan. So as a cautionary note here, as we currently have not achieved the recommended guideline, we are still working on that, trying to get down to the numbers that we put forward to you today. It is anticipated that we will have to further prioritize, refine, and phase some of these items in order to get to the recommended guideline. So we are not there yet, and there is still significant work to do. Next slide, please. So Durham Region Police Services submitted their initial 2025 budget forecast to the region, and they are continuing to work on their budget proposals. The initial submission, and I want to enhance that because they're still, as I say, working through that process, but the initial submission they provided for 2025 is a budget of $313.3 million, which is $45 million or a 16.9% increase over their 2024 approved budget. As the chief identified in his presentation yesterday, there are a number of pressures facing the service in 2025, along with implications of the final approval of the regulations that go with the Community Safety and Policing Act. So this slide provides a very high-level summary based on that initial submission. As noted on the slide, base pressures are projected to be significant in 2025, and that's due in part to the annualization of the 76 new positions approved in the 2024 budget. As you will recall, in order to achieve guideline last year, DRPS adjusted the start date for the new positions from the July 1st to September 1st, so that has a $1.7 million additional pressure on the 2025 budget. For strategic investments, the initial budget forecasts another 168 new positions, and you can see this, a bit of the breakdown. It's between frontline uniform, investigative, and civilian positions. As Council is also aware, DRPS is completing a facilities needs assessment, and the results of that study is expected this fall. I believe it's going to their board in fairly short order, and that will place further pressures on the 2025 capital budget and 9-year forecast. So the proposed guideline before Council today provides for an increase of $24.787 million, or 9.25% above the police's 2024 approved budget. So that results in that 2.16% increase in the overall regional property tax levy. However, in recognition of the pressures facing DRPS, finance staff reviewed other financing scenarios and commenced this year to allocate a portion of assessment growth directly to DRPS rather than applying the full amount to the overall comprehensive budget. So that resulted in reducing DRPS's impact on the overall property tax bill. So based on the police's initial submission, new initiatives would have to be reduced by approximately $20 million to achieve the proposed guideline. One of the ongoing pressures facing regional municipalities that we spoke of very particularly last year and of course has continued, and it's across the province, is the increasing costs of social services and public health programs. So in 2024, almost 23% of the region's budget was funded from provincial sources and almost 10% from federal sources. However, since 2019, regional funding of social services and public health programs has increased by $87 million, or 52.4%. It can be attributed to a number of reasons, including societal changes, but it's indicative of the increasing reliance on the property tax base, and that's expected to continue in 2025. For funding of public health programs provides a great example of this increased pressure. So while the region hasn't received its specific allocation for 2025 for public health mandatory programs, the province has announced a 1% increase in funding. That 1% doesn't even keep pace with the base inflationary and contractual pressures impacting public health. So our 2025 public health base pressures are about 4.83%. So there's a delta there between the 1% and that 4.83%. That will have to be funded from property taxes to maintain service levels and meet the needs of our community. As highlighted in Section 10 of the report, on the social service side, the region is still waiting for confirmation of a number of different 2025 funding levels. So we will continue to advocate there for sustained provincial funding for critical issues. And we'll work with the province to try to understand other impacts that we're feeling through that. And if there is a risk in this guideline that we're putting forward to today, that is particularly one of them. So if we don't achieve the objectives of what we need from stability from the province, then that'll end up being truly an incremental on the guideline, because we cannot absorb those differences if they don't maintain what we've been projecting. So the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about debenture financing, because this is becoming a critical area as time goes by. So as mentioned, to achieve the 2025 recommended guideline, we will have to use debt financing strategically to fund one-time significant capital items where we don't have adequate reserves and reserve funds available. As a quick side note, the draw from reserve funds for 2021 was $321 million, and that was a 35% increase over the prior year. So that increased reliance on reserve funds will continue to increase. The table on this slide illustrates the projected debenture requirements based on the 2024 approved budget and forecast, as well as additional debt financing that's been approved by Council throughout 2024. So the initial forecast projects a total borrowing of $1.7 billion between 2024 and 2033. In addition, it's anticipated that these debt requirements will increase as a result of additional capital priorities requiring debenture financing, such as various housing and homelessness investments, an expanded Durham DRPS capital program, potential implications for the Go East extension, and transit-oriented development BRT requirements. And we may also have issues around our capital program for transit, depending on what the outcome is of our challenges on funding on transit from the federal and provincial governments. The tough message here is that debt servicing costs are projected to increase by approximately $175 million over the next 10 years. So that's the paying the mortgage. So that translates about $102 million on the property tax base, $40 million on the water supply, and $33 on the sanitary sewer base. So that's going to generally translate to an average incremental 1% tax increase annually to support debt as it comes on stream. And it's more significantly felt on the water sewer side. So we will be updating debenture financing projections and associated debt servicing costs as part of the 2025 budget when we bring it forward to you in December. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Nicole to talk about our engagement on the budget.
Thanks, Nancy. So as you know, one of our key priorities over the last couple of years has been enhancing the way in which we engage with residents on the region's budget. As Chair Henry has mentioned, we're hosting our annual budget town hall on Thursday, October the 10th, beginning at 6:30 in the evening. During this event, residents can join us over the phone, online, or in person to learn more about the region's programs and services and ask questions about the region's business plans and budget. In addition, they can provide input and feedback on their key priorities. Last year, we saw over 10,000 residents participate in our town hall event. Promotion of the town hall through our various channels will be ramping up over the coming weeks, and residents can register for the town hall or submit input and questions by email at budgets@durham.ca. Input received through this process will be considered in the development of the final budget submissions for presentation to Council in December of this year. I'll turn it back over to Elaine to conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. So to close, the 2025 property tax guideline recommendation proposes an overall 2025 property tax impact of 2.72% for regional and external agency services, net expenditure increases of 5.96%, 2.16% for Durham Region Police Services, net expenditure increases of 9.25%, and a 0.02% for conservation authorities, which is a net expenditure increase of 2.5% after assessment growth. This represents a total 4.9% increase on the region's portions of the property tax bill, which, depending on the municipality, represents approximately 53% of the residential property tax bill. This is roughly equivalent to a 2.6% increase to the total residential property tax bill and $163 annual increase for the average residential property in the region. Approval of the specific property tax guidelines at this time provides direction and assists staff with finalizing the 2025 budget submission for presentation to Regional Council in December of this year. Timing of the guideline approval is critical for achieving approval of the 2025 business plans and budgets before the end of December. The core of the proposed guideline rests on critical service needs for paramedics, transit, police, housing, and homelessness. In order to achieve these proposed guidelines and meet the needs of our critical frontline service areas, we will have to draw significantly on reserves and reserve funds, and development charges. Debt will also be needed to be strategically employed, which will result in additional future operating pressures for debt payment obligations. As we have already said, we will continue to leverage any opportunity for provincial and federal funding, and will be actively promoting our pressures through the government relations team in the CAO's office. Next slide, please. And with that, Nancy and Nicole have taken their seats so that we can be prepared to answer any questions, and we are available to answer any questions that you may have at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions to the presentation? Mayor Foster.
It's that moment of anticipation as we wait for that to light up. I think that's why they do that. Mr. Chair, thank you. I've got a couple of comments and 6 questions. The good news, that's the bad news. The good news is that'll reduce the amount of time that I end up speaking to the report. But they do speak directly to the slides that are in front of us. As I read the report, and if we look at slide 6, the report speaks to housing and homelessness and increases in the budget since 2022. I've found the report and some of this a little bit, I'm going to say disjointed in that I don't have a sense as to what we are doing on dollar-wise increased budget on housing and homelessness. So I appreciate we need to see what the feds and the province are doing, but what are we doing? And you did speak to a 1% increase in public health. I missed the number on the other just pressures, but do we have a sense of what we are doing on these core issues?
Perhaps I will start and then turn it over to Stella or Nancy. With respect to the social housing revitalization, 1635 and Ritson Road, you will have approved at committee earlier last week, and then it will go to council in a couple of weeks, funding to begin and complete the detailed design for 1635 and part of our social housing renewal. That is critical in order to access CMHC funding, and we've been in detailed discussions to do that. With all of the housing revitalization and supportive housing work we're doing, we are eagerly awaiting the opening of programs provincially and federally. None are open right now, so our goal is to have proposals ready to submit as soon as they are open, in the hopes that we would be at the front end of the queue in terms of accessing funding. So the primary activity right now is getting council approval to front end the detailed design of 2 of the major projects. We still have a market sounding out for the Ritson Road School, which closes, I believe, in a month or so. And I will maybe turn it over to Stella or Nancy to talk specifically about what program changes they're doing, if that doesn't answer your question.
No, if I may interject. So I'm looking at it's not even a 30,000-foot level, it's a 60,000-foot level. There's tons of work to be done. So yeah. This is by no means where we're necessarily landing. But I guess at the 30,000-foot level, it would be nice. We've got numbers for DRT, we've got numbers for DRP. In here, and I don't have, and it's quite likely me, a good sense of the increases that we may see in the budget for some fundamental issues. And I'll stand on a hilltop for a minute. If we can't get in front of homelessness, if we can't get in front of addictions, if we can't get in front of mental health, we are going to see requests on a regular basis, as we have here. It's 16.9% or 16.9 for DRP. I mean, that is. And the same with DRT. And this time, and I'm going to offend people, and I'm willing to be educated, it really does seem a bit tone deaf in terms of the other priorities. If we go to slide 7, and Nancy, I think you confirmed this, $3 million for roads and bridges. I think the report identified that we needed $4 million. Am I correct in that the PCI continues to deteriorate? So my recollection was that we were doing a pretty good job. Roads are getting worse, and if my numbers are correct, we can expect roads to get worse?
Through the chair, yes. So we are projecting that we need an incremental $4 million increase in support to roads and bridges incrementally each year for the next 10 years. to try to get to the numbers we're presenting to you today in the guideline, we are trying to fit 3 million in, and then hopefully next year ramp that up. So absolutely, our PCI numbers are dropping. As you know, we only have a certain amount of resources. So the last couple of years, we have had to invest in transit, paramedics, housing and social services, and we can't not do that. But Works has been a bit left to the side when it comes to roads and bridges, and that's starting to really, really tell on us. If you'd like, I can also elaborate a bit on the housing and homelessness, but if you're satisfied, I
Yeah,
won't.
I don't want to take all the oxygen in the room, so we can talk later. And again, anyone who feels I need to be educated, I'm delighted to listen, so please reach out. On slide 10, and all, you'd mentioned that debt moving forward is 1%. I have a prediction that there will be a desire to take money out of reserves, because this happens every year, to fund operational items. But is it too simplistic to say that we do not have the money in the bank account that will satisfy the needs moving forward?
That's correct. As you and I have chatted about over a number of years, the reserve funds here at the region have been established for particular purposes, and all of those significant capital projects are now coming to the forefront, which is triggering both the debt and huge draws from reserve funds.
So to our colleagues at the province and our colleagues in Ottawa, we are not sitting on billions of dollars of unused money, and getting in the way. As a matter of fact, we've got a debt crunch coming.
That's exactly correct.
Alrighty. While we're doing the public consultation, on slide 11, you're speaking about that. It's a bit early, but will we be looking at, in an ideal world, we have a strat plan that has been driven by public consultation. We're doing the budget. Will we be looking to the budget to hear what's important for them? Because we've identified priorities here without necessarily hearing priorities from the public.
So if I may, through the chair, perhaps the CIO would like to speak on the strategic plan side of things.
Sorry about that. I thought you were going to jump in first. Absolutely. We have been engaging with the public on many fronts, the homeless and homelessness file, as well as the strategic plan. So that has really enabled us to see where community priorities and stresses are, which definitely influences the budget. But as we said in the report, many of the pressures that we're facing in 25 are the same as the pressures we faced in 2024. We're not adding new services. We are trying to expand services where there is a critical demand, and we're really trying to address those critical strategic issues such as housing and homelessness, policing, and other areas of that. So when we consult on specific projects, whether it be housing, strategic planning, anything else that you can think of, all of that does feed into the mix and influencing what we see as priorities that need to be addressed in the budget.
So Madam CEO, thank you. To the work that staff have done thus far, you've got a mountain of work in front of you. We've got a lot of decisions to make, but I'll suggest that senior levels of government have abandoned our communities. They have abandoned our residents. We are the last line of defense. And despite being overwhelmed and underfunded, we have to do things that property taxes were never designed to do. Those levels of government, Mr. Chair, you have said it so many times, they need to step up. There needs to be a reset in terms of recognition of what we have to do that we were never supposed to do. So I'm frustrated, as you might hear from this, but thankful to staff for a tremendous amount of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very happy to see Durham Transit is still alive and well in the budget, so thank you very much for that. Although a little bit less than what we committed to a couple years ago, I completely understand. I would like to know if we've heard anything on the zero admission fund. We had applied for infrastructure and busing for the electric fleet.
I'll go to our CAO.
We have not had a formal response yet. I could tell you that the general manager, his team, and the intergovernmental team are working closely with the federal government to refine the application with a view to what I I'm optimistically hoping will be a positive announcement in the coming weeks, and I'll just look to the general manager to see if he wishes to add anything.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, it's fine.
So I've been knocking on Minister Holland's door also to see if we can get any push from him. And if we don't in the number of weeks, we need to send a letter. Because we simply cannot do this funding on the backs of taxpayer. We can't do this infrastructure build on the backs of taxpayers. So if they want us to clean the air, then they need to help us pay for that. That's what it comes down to. So at AMO, we did a delegation with Minister Bethan Foley, and I'm shocked to hear that they didn't send us any money because he told us they did. Many, many millions of dollars, and said, please go back and ask the region for money. So did they give us many, many millions of dollars or not?
I think what you might be referring to, Councillor, would be funding for, is it the HPP funding, Stella? And we did get increased funding. I'm going to turn it over to Stella because I'm not getting this right, and she will fill you in. But we did not get millions and millions of dollars for things like 1635. We're plugging away and hoping that we will.
Thank you, Elaine, through the chair. They announced our homeless prevention funding a couple of years ago at 18 million. That was really the increase, which wasn't a true increase, was a replacement of the Social Services Relief Fund that we were getting during COVID. So that funding stopped. They replaced it with the extra homelessness prevention funding. So it's not really an increase. It just helped us to stay status quo. We haven't been able to do a lot more with the funding that we received.
So they decreased or eliminated one level
Right.
and then increased another
Correct.
level, so we're even. Okay, thank you. That's all I have to ask.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I want to thank staff for the presentation. And I do have quite a few questions, but I'll save most of them for the report. Just going to, I guess, page 10 of the presentation with respect to the debentures or debt financing. So I take it, so we're going to be increasing our debt load by 1.7 billion over the 10 years. And if I'm correct, in over the 10 years, it'll be 175 million in extra carrying costs. What would be by the year 2033, what are we going to actually be incurring for debt servicing costs on all of our debt?
So through the chair, we'd have to do some math to forward all that way through. Based on just this incremental debt, at about 9 million is 1% now. If you generally kind of escalated, that's where I came back to saying 1% incrementally. If it's 100 million that we're adding on in repayment by the time we get to the 10th year, and 9 to 10 million is approximation of a 1%, that's why it would be 1% incrementally, give or take shifting in time from when we'd issue each debt. So that's a very high level estimate at that about a 10% increase for this new debt that we have now, or that we would be putting on over those 10 years.
Okay, so by 2033, we'd be carrying how much in total debt? Because this is a incremental number here, right? 1.7 billion. So what might we actually be carrying by then? Because obviously we're going to be paying some down as well.
That's correct. So, most of our debt is 10 to 15-year windows. So the hope would be that a significant portion would be paid down. But keep in mind, a lot of our current debt right now is paid by development charges. So it's growth coverage. And we're talking here about tax levy supported types of debt.
Okay. And just, I guess, following up on Mayor Foster's comments about the slew of items in our property taxes currently that should not be there. I'll go back to a comment I made yesterday at Committee of the Whole, and that was at AMO. I had a question ready for the minister at the Ministers' Forum, but one was asked similar, 2 questions before me, and that was, again, when's the province going to step up and sit down with municipalities and AMO and come up with a new funding formula? The provinces are always crying to the federal government they need a new funding formula, and they get all upset when that doesn't come through. But yet we keep asking for it, and at the Ministers' Forum, they blew us off again. They didn't even answer the question. And then, of course, when I followed it up, they stated, oh, municipalities have been made whole. And as I confirmed yesterday, we haven't been made whole. So I wouldn't get our hopes up too high that the province is anytime quickly going to be coming to us and coming up with a new funding formula for municipalities. So the mess that Mayor Carter spoke to is going to continue, if not get much worse over the coming years. And I think we ought to step up our rhetoric, so to speak, on that front. So, but thank you very much to staff. And like I said, I've got some other questions, but I'll save them for the report.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the preliminary report and the budget. I know last year on average, residents were paying an average $300 a year between the municipal tax and the regional tax. Do you have a figure what you're looking at, a dollar figure?
So through the chair, for the regional side for 2025, if the guideline is approved and we manage to achieve that, we're looking about $163 for an average household. I can't tell you what the local component would be because they're all still during the process of their budgets as well.
So we are not much better off than we were last year,
So
marginally.
So through the chair, what I will say, so last year in the end, we had a 7.5% approval. We appreciate greatly the challenges that our residents were having, which is why you see a 4.9 today. That does not come easy, and there are still some significant risks in what we brought forward. This is our attempt to acknowledge very clearly that there's two sides to the equation. There is a desperate need in our community for many services that, as other councillors have mentioned, are falling on the property tax base. But we also know that taxpayers themselves are hugely challenged. So that 4.9, even though the math may not look great, that 163 a year, we have both sides of that equation. We have people to take care of that have to pay the tax bill, but we have people to take care of that require those services. So we've done our best to try to acknowledge both sides of that with this guideline.
I am aware of that, and I know there are challenges with the increased population growth, et cetera, et cetera. But it's tough out there in residents. You know exactly, well, interest rates are kind of going down, but that's a lot of burden on the taxpayers. So can you please, I don't do line by line, or you know the inner workings of what the needs are, but can you please try to get that down to maybe at least $100? I don't know what you have to cut or what you have to do, but and that's still a lot. But we have to show that we understand the suffering that's out there. And talking about that, people losing their homes, etc. So that's going to add to the homelessness, etc. I know it's not a lot, but to some folks, to us, it might seem like not a lot of money, but to others, it's significant.
So through the chair, and the CAO can add to this if she'd like, we have brought forward today a guideline that is as aggressive as I can comfortably bring to you, acknowledging that exact point. Recognizing, as I say, all of the commitments that council has made for all of these other items. I absolutely wish we could do further. My worry is that I have left, I shouldn't speak as if it's my budget, but what I think is at risk are our social service programs. I'm not convinced that I have sufficient funds in there. It's going to be very difficult. All the departments are challenged to try to get to this. In particular, though, I'm concerned about whether there's enough in this guideline for that. I certainly, at this point, unless council takes a different tact from the priorities you've set, there isn't any more that we can do there without taking that different tact. Hopefully the plus side, the Bank of Canada, as you know, has been reducing rates, and the projection is there is a couple of more rate decreases to happen. I am hopeful that at least for those people that have mortgages that are renewing in 2025, which is when these tax bills would hit, that at least in those household circumstances, they will see a significant reduction in their mortgage payments, and that may assist. Certainly, inflation is coming down, and I am hopeful that, since we're talking 2025, that that is some avenue. But again, I'll defer to the CAO if she has anything to add, but I'm concerned that we have put this really tight in order to recognize exactly the issue you're raising. I don't have other avenues to go to, if I may be so bold.
Yeah, and I know, and if you'll indulge me, Mr. Chair, an enhanced access to alcohol isn't going to help. Studies after studies say it's going to more drunk driving, a lot of other social issues that comes along with that. So I am sure you haven't factored that in the budget as well, but that's a fact. Study after study has verified that that's the case when you have enhanced access to alcohol.
You're getting pretty far off topic.
It's not far off. It's not off topic because we're going to end up having to pay the consequences of that.
But it's not part of the presentation.
So I'm just saying, so anyway, thank you.
Okay, it's to the presentation. Councilor Brenner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Nancy, the $163, which is the anticipated increase for an average property, and if I missed it in the presentation, I do apologize. What did you base an average property in value here in Durham Region?
Through the chair, thank you for that question because it is a great one that confuses the public greatly. If you recall, our assessment base is still based on 2016 values. So obviously, everybody in this room, if you said I could buy a house for $481,000, sign me up now. But you have to translate that back 8 years in value. And then it's based on the overall residential property code across the whole region. So you have some that will be higher than that and some that will be lower than that. So it is based on a residential property code on our return roll, but it is based on that 2016 base year.
And I'm not sure if this would fit into the presentation, but given we're talking the 2016 assessment codes, if there was a change by impact, do we have any projection as to how that amount would be impacted and what the 163 would translate into in 2025 dollars?
So if I may, our budget isn't driven by assessed values. So if MPAC is given the direction to reassess properties to 2020, January 1st, 2024 base year, our budget is about the expenses we have to incur. Costs the same to drive a snowplow on a 2016 base assessment year as it does at a 2024 base year. What happens is your house value goes up on the returned roll and the tax rate goes down, so I'm still collecting the same amount to drive that snowplow. So reassessment doesn't affect how our numbers would show. What it does affect is between taxpayers and between municipalities within a Durham regional structure. So there could be a significant shift from a particular property type that hasn't increased as much versus one that has. The flip side to that is the argument that those that have not increased as much as others are entitled to pay a lesser portion. So you sort of, it will be a very dramatic challenge for taxpayers, and we will have to do a huge amount of education when and if a reassessment is triggered.
Thank you, and I really appreciate that simple clarity because it is something that comes up all the time. And you've put it into simple language, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Carter.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a couple questions through you to our Director of Finance. Just out of curiosity, as of December 31st, 2024, could you tell us what the outstanding debt is for the region, please?
So I'm trying to recall that off the top of my head. I want to say it's about 56 million. And then we also have, might be more than that, that might be what we put to market this coming past year. So we also carry the debt of the locals on our, because we borrow on
Yes.
their behalf.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm talking about regional
yes,
debt.
yeah,
So it's
I-
about $56 million that our outstanding debt is for the region?
And I think it's 100 and some million, if not more, for the locals. But I'll
Locals
also,
pay that though,
Yes.
right? So that's not,
it doesn't affect our
that's just a
budget.
float.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And I hope I'm not totally wrong on those. If, we'll email you if I'm totally
Great.
off the mark on those.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate that. I just want a clarification. I heard that there's a $500,000 increase on OW. That gives us 57 more files that we're able to do. So my question being is at $745 a month, how much has our file grown on OW in the last year?
So if I can, I'll refer to Stella, what she may be
Great.
able to answer on
Thank
that.
you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 491,000 that we received is a one-time amount, Mayor Carter, for 2024. Our caseload has risen by about 10 to 15% since CERB ended, so since 2022. So we're up to about 10,000 cases today. And of course, we are looking at a shortfall because as the employment side of Ontario Works has transitioned to the system manager role, we lost 4.9 million that we're trying to accommodate 2024 and 2025.
So does that get added into your budget this year, the $5 million? Because you
Yes,
got to make it up somewhere,
I've got to
right?
make it up in my
Yeah.
budget, correct, yes.
So, and that $500,000 is just a one-time?
It's a one-time.
$491,000.
Because next year, they're going to have a new funding model for Ontario Works, and
Sure.
we anticipate further changes, yes, yes.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Foster brought up a really good point about what we're supposed to provide and what we're not supposed to provide, and, you know, the tax dollars, what was really built in regards to the revenues that we have coming in. Have we ever considered doing a report in regards to what our core responsibilities are and what our costs would be versus the expectation of the provincial and federal government in regards to the programs that they are pushing down to us?
So maybe if I'll start, and in this one, I will lob over
Please.
to the CEO to continue
And
on it.
please don't make it complicated.
So the only thing,
I'm a simple man.
Yeah, so the only thing I will say is that we are the system service provider in a number of areas. So when you try to sort out what's mandatory and what's not, and what the province dictates that we're required to do, the funding isn't their deciding factor. But when we try to divide it up, it's almost impossible to say, well, this is a trigger because of that decision, because we're given the overall responsibility for an issue, and they're not helping us deal with it. So it's not an easy thing to do. You know, the only thing I can do from, say, this point to December is if they fail to provide in that section 10 of the report where I'm talking about what we don't know, certainly in December I can say, you know, public health, they only gave us 1% and we need 4.6. And I can say, well, in these sections of section 10 in the report where we're waiting on social service related ones, I can say, well, I'm now short $1 million from what I thought I would be in September. So those kinds of things I can easily trigger. The whole review of how the budget is built is very confusing because of the service system manager obligations that we have. So the province could say that we're required to do that, even though we wouldn't choose perhaps to do the number of social service related things in Ontario. It's where we do way more in Ontario than other provinces.
Maybe I'll just jump in. I think what you're
Please.
talking about really is core services, and our core services are a combination of those services which as a regional government we're required to provide, and those are generally what we call the hard services. And then there are those services that we're legislated to provide. So for example, operating one long-term care facility and cost sharing in our service system management role. Where there becomes difficulty is we have obviously more than one long-term care facility. That was a decision of council, not necessarily a decision forced on us by the province. And in some cases, we do invest more than our cost share ratio requirements. Cost sharing ratios have been becoming very foggy lately. In some of those instances, it's because of provincial downloading. In other instances, it's because council has opted to go beyond the cost share requirements of the province. So it's a very tricky question to answer. But I think what you are talking about is a core service review. It's a huge process. And my question is really, what would be the value add out of it?
Yeah, and I appreciate, I do appreciate what you're saying. I guess the issue being is, if we're going to be equipped to be able to have these conversations, it's really important that we have the proper data to be able to have these conversations. Because what we're hearing and some of the comments that have been made today is, we, as Councillor Crawford had said, we gave you millions and millions of dollars, but we're not able to rebuke or have a conversation about it because we're not equipped to be able to have that conversation, to be able to say, no, that's not factually true, and here's the reason why. So I'm just wondering, is there a process that we can look at moving forward over the next 24 months or something, so that we're better prepared as advocates for this region and for our cities to be able to really kind of say, you know, that we're able to kind of put our case forward? Because I think what happens is they've got their narrative and we kind of sit there and go, oh, okay, I guess that's true. And I just don't know what the answer is, but I think I'd like to be better equipped when I'm having these conversations.
So Mayor Carter, just before I go to the CAO, Madam Treasurer, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Ontario the only province that pays for social housing through property taxes?
That's correct. And the other thing I would note is the province often says they've made us whole, but they mean
Like dug us into a
universal. They
hole or
mean
just-
universally across municipalities.
Yeah.
So we're in the whole 70 million, further to Mayor Schumer's question yesterday, we're in the whole 70 million of actual DC monies that we didn't collect. When we asked the province, and Chair Henry has sent a number of letters, when are we going to be made whole? They say they've made municipalities whole because they provided funding programs to local and single-tier municipalities that the regions aren't entitled to. So their math is they've made us universally whole, but they've not made us individually whole. And that's also a problem. So they added all 444 municipalities together and say, well, we've put that money back into the system. But it's only, say, 10 of us that have lost all that money, and we don't get any of that. So that's also speaks to your comment over you can't really follow their conversational pathway when you're trying to debate with them.
I hope you could see the expression on my face, because I'm absolutely confused. So I understand that. Making the municipalities whole is one thing. The region has other services outside of what local municipalities do. That's a separate conversation, and the two, you know, are not relevant in my opinion. I mean, it's magic math, right? So I think that that's unrealistic. The one thing I do want to ask about the presentation that you've given us today, were all the considerations in regards to labor agreements, bargain patterning, all of that taken into consideration with these numbers, or does that also have to be added as we move forward?
So through the chair, for those agreements that have been settled, we've reflected that. For those that have not settled, we've given our best estimate of what an outcome might look like in a conservative fashion. And then we'll have to adjust in future years. So we've attempted to. Whether that matches what the real settlements will be, that I can't speak to.
Yeah, there's some significant impacts in regards to labor agreements and bargain pattern. I don't know if I'm using the word.
Patterning, yeah.
Thank you, that too. It's like charcuterie. I could say that, but I can't say pattern. Anyways, and that's going to play a significant role. Even if you look at policing, that's going to play a significant role in regards to taking millions and millions of dollars that'll be necessary. And that's outside of, you know, the control, because it's province-wide, right? So that's why I asked the question. So I'm just curious about that. So to answer the question is, you've done your best estimate based upon the knowledge that you have today in regards to what impacts that will have, and you've applied that in each department to be able to kind of really be able to come up with a realistic number. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I'm more confused now than I was when I started. That's okay.
Councillor Neal?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't know, during the summer, there's a petition going around in regards to Durham regional tax. I don't know if staff are aware of that petition or.
They're aware.
Okay, well, the residents in my community are, tax is a big issue. So they're always asking me to comment, and most people in my community signed it. And the key concerns are within that petition. So if staff are aware of, I'd like some answers in regards so I can get back to my residents. Then there's also in the media, the Durham Insane property tax, save local economy decisions, and then the radio had something about it, and then Global TV had concerns over rising property tax in Durham. So as councillors, and I reiterate what Mayor Schumer said, because I was at AMO and I saw where the ministers did not want to answer that question in regards to a new agreement for the municipalities. So I don't know if staff can possibly get a hold of that petition, if they're aware of it, and maybe help us out with some of these questions that are coming forward.
So, if I may.
Like, is that something that can be done?
So if I may, through the chair, just a very high-level comment, and it relates to the conversation Councillor Brenner and I just had. The petition and the ZooCasa and these things that you read in the paper, they take a look at a real estate value in today's market and multiply it against our property tax rate and say that we are way worse than everywhere else. That's a very, very unfair and incorrect math, because you have to take the 2016 value, as I just spoke earlier with Councillor Brenner. So the math that they're doing is incorrect. And, we try to explain, and as I say, sorry for repeating this, but as Councillor Brenner noted, it's very hard to comprehend in everyday language. But if you take City of Toronto's tax rate, it's way lower than ours, but their assessed values are way higher. You have to look at both of those, and both the survey and the ZooCasa and all these things only take that tax rate and multiply it by a very high number, and that's not the fair comparison.
Okay, I'm just going by what the residents are telling me in my community. And let's face it, this City of Toronto tax issue has been going on ever since I've been on council, and that's 24 years. I've heard about Toronto taxes because a lot of people are moving from the west to Oshawa, North Oshawa, especially in my area. So, I mean, we have to combat that all the time. So I don't know if we need Olivia Chow as our consultant now to get our taxes in line with what people in Toronto are paying, because that's the questions I'm getting. So I appreciate if I can get some answers then from staff, and I'll get a hold of that petition. Thank you.
Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Chair. Not specifically on the presentation, but just following up on Mayor Carter's comments. I'm not sure exactly the core services review is exactly what Mayor Carter would be looking for. Just guessing at what that would entail, it'd be massive. But to follow up on what he was speaking to, if I had every minute back from F&A, Council, Committee of the Whole, for when you yourself, sir, rant about paying for expenses that are not ours, for example, refugee housing and settlement costs, I think it was said, frankly, that, if we didn't have those costs, which are not borne by us, we wouldn't have had a tax increase last year at all. So I think those forms of costs, in terms of things we're paying for that have been downloaded to us that we have to pay, well, we don't have to pay for, we are paying for to keep our communities moving and to keep our communities, without seeing these more problems on the streets. Those are costs that we're paying for. So do we have any form of tally sheet in terms of those costs that you yourself like to speak to? I'll say politely. Thank you.
That's a very difficult question. We could certainly take a look at where we are paying more than what we perceive to be our legislative, our regulatory mandates and the services that we share with the province, our federal government. But it becomes very tricky when the province asks us to do something. It's generally through legislation or regulation, and we're required to do it. The issue becomes where we do more than the minimal required by the province, and is that a council decision or a provincial requirement? But if you leave it with Nancy, Nicole, and I, we can have a discussion and try to think about how we could simplify and put some kind of order of magnitude around what it is you're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I'm sitting here trying to summon, I have someone that coaches me sometimes on my comments that I put out to the public, because sometimes I feel that I jeopardize the region's position when we're applying for funding. Because comments made sometimes when the other levels of government hear them, they take offense to that. And today there's probably going to be one of those days. So, members of council, we saw the presentation and we saw the police budget from yesterday. And we know the challenges in our communities. But if there is no consequences for actions related to the people that are committing the challenges, then there's no reason for them to stop doing what they're doing. So when you look at the number of people that are out, yesterday you heard the chief, there's 500 people in our community that we're managing right now. The courts release them into our community, but they don't give us the money to manage them. It's put back on the municipality. But the question is, why were they released in the first place? You heard the chief say that there are people out there on murder charges that have been released on bail back into our community. There was a time in this country, and it wasn't that long ago, when police officers like Councillor Chapman, when they took somebody to some place, consequences happened. Councillor Chapman, correct me if I'm wrong. Yet we've done that. And then at the other hand, and I'll give you, I absolutely believe we need to build more houses. But has anybody ever heard anybody talk about the cost of building houses? So when you build a house, you have to be able to turn the water on to brush your teeth in the morning. That's our responsibility. And you have to deal with the wastewater. That's our responsibility. So there's a number of things that go on that we deal with that we have no control over. And by the way, we deliver balanced budgets every year. The other two levels of government don't deliver balanced budgets. In fact, has anybody ever seen a federal budget? I can't remember ever seeing one that would list where their expenditures are. Members of council, as we go through this budget, it's going to be difficult. But there isn't, well, I'm not going to say there isn't, but almost every member of this council is at one time or another, well, I've been in the chair, asked to have something added into the budget. Yesterday, we had a motion about trying to manage hate crimes. Yesterday, and absolutely we should deal with hate crimes. But there is a cost to managing that. But if there's no cost and no consequence of the actions that create those crimes, then there's a problem. So I look forward to the rest of the discussions today. I hope I summoned my inner ability to not offend anybody. But there is going to be a time when all of you, and it's going to be within the next year, need to stand up and say to those who are running for federal office, or we as a council need to prepare a handbook to give to candidates running in the provincial and federal elections to understand the complexity of the issues that they download onto us each and every day. My rant will stop. There are no other speakers related to the presentation. So now we'll move on to delegations. Mr. Greg Meloche is not in the room. Is he online? Second time, Mr. Greg Meloche, are you in the building? Third and final time, Mr. Meloche. Seeing Mr. Meloche is not here, we will move on to our next delegation. 5.2 is Mr. Jeff Gray, President of Unifor Local 222, in attendance in the room today to talk about our long-term servicing and financial strategy for transit. Good morning, and when you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a real education for me this morning to listen to the great work and the pressure everybody in this room does, and I thank you for that. My comments are going to be short and sweet this morning. In regards to Durham Region Transit, I've spoke here several times, and I'm here to deliver a message to say thank you. Thank you to everyone in this room that's collaborated with us and look for solutions to deliver a world-class transit to our incredible region. So moving forward, we look forward to the challenge, and we welcome the opportunity to keep working with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions to Mr. Gray? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Perfect, thank you.
Our next delegation is Mr. Ian Sinnott, Chair of Unifor Local 222. He's here in the room, long-term servicing and financial strategy for transit.
Morning, everyone. I'd like to start off by thanking Council for the funding Durham Region Transit received in the 2024 budget. However, Durham Region Transit is falling further behind the growing needs of Durham Region's constituents by failing to meet the growing demands of the ridership and communities within Durham Region. And the frustration by the public is there, and the exhaustion of our operators is at an all-time high. Durham Region Transit's report shows that ridership is 30% higher than pre-pandemic numbers, and for the first time ever over the summer months, transit ridership reached 1 million riders per month. The region's information report, released in December 2023, shows that from May 2018 to May 2023, Durham Region's population grew by 7.3%. Durham Region Transit and the region's report would indicate that during the same time period, transit ridership growth has outpaced the region's population growth by roughly 4 times. The region's information report also indicates that in the next 5 years, the population in Durham Region will increase by 14.2%. So if transit's growth remains as strong over this period of time, then transit ridership will far exceed the numbers we are seeing today, and every indication is showing that ridership's growth will remain strong. Durham Region will need strong commitments and proper investment going forward for its transit system so that it has the resources to meet demands of the region's growing population and a ridership while also being able to expand services to the region's growing communities. Viable transit infrastructure can increase productivity, cut commute times, and reduce greenhouse emissions while increasing a person's quality of life, which studies indicate will attract top employers and skilled workers. I'm asking that Durham Region keep its commitment to the 2% budget levy increase for the transit service financial strategy so transit does not fall further behind the needs of its communities. And I did hear everybody today on road pressures the region is facing and the affordability pressures of taxpayers living within the region. But I would like to point out that a viable transit would alleviate these road pressures because it would reduce the need for vehicles. And if our taxpayers had the ability to take transit, which numbers indicate that they would, then that would save them on the cost of vehicles as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to Mr. Sinnott? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Members of council, we have no correspondence. I'm going to suggest a 10-minute recess before we put the report on the floor. Moved by Councillor McDougall, seconded by Councillor Mulcahy. On a 10-minute recess, all those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, we'll be back at 10:55. I make 17. How many online?
7 online.
Okay, we're good. So, members of council, I'll call this meeting back to order. Mr. Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Electronic roll call is starting now.
Mr. Clerk, checking on the roll call. I know we have enough members of council in the room to have quorum, so. Okay, members of council, it's not on the agenda, but I believe the gentleman in the back of the room has been asked to speak. Well, am I correct, sir? Okay, wait, there's a couple things we have to do before you can do that. So I would need a motion to waive the rules to add, and you know, I know your first name's Doug. What's your last name? Glass. To add Mr. Glass to the agenda. It'll take 2/3, and can we do the motion here at the same time? So moved by Mayor Foster, seconded by Councillor Crawford. Thank you. That we add Mr. Glass to the agenda and ask him to speak. Now, it'll take 2/3? So 2/3. There's 7 online. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Okay, sorry, before I call the vote, one second. Councillor Nicholson, are you asking to speak to adding this to the agenda? Councillor Nicholson?
No, sir.
No, okay.
No, sir.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, on adding this to the agenda, all those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none. So, Mr. Glass, please come down to the microphone. And the rules are you have 5 minutes once you start.
Great, thank you, Council and Regional Chair. I want to commend everyone so far, Chief Administrator Officer Ansi, for the work that you guys are doing. I know it's difficult, given all the pressures, and this will be the 4.9%, the first decrease in property taxes in 4 years since 2021. So that is, in 2021, we were 1.94, it went to 2.58, 5.43, 7.59, and now 4.90. With that said, if we look at the average since this council came in, most of this council in 2018, the average between 2018 and 2025 is 3.57. So the 4.9 is still 37% higher than the average since this council. So I think there, as much as this is great news for residents and such, there is hopefully an opportunity to try and bring these down further, as Mr. Anderson said a little earlier. I will cite a couple of examples. We, using the financial statements from 2018 to 2023, financial statements looking at expenses and so on, budgets by departments. There has been considerable investments in various departments over that time, considerable. For example, protections to persons and property was $230 million in 2018. It is now $309 million, a $78 million increase, or 34%. The social and family services, $342 million versus $505 million, now $165 million increase, or 48%. Social housing, $66 million to $88 million, a 33% increase, or 22 million, right? That's a very interesting one, $88 million, because if I hear a lot of the conversation, and I'm not diminishing the social housing issue that we have, 88 million is still a far cry from our police budget of $307 million. The population, or sorry, if I look at the total, $1.25 billion in 2018, it's now $1.7 billion in 2023, and we know with last year's big budget increase of, or tax increase of 7.59%, those numbers in 2024 are even larger. That total increase was almost $450 million, or 36%. So our divisions and departments have actually been very well funded. And I like to measure things against population growth and housing growth, because those are two key measures that are part of the 2051 plan. Nancy just talked about priorities. This council has set priorities, and we are investing in those priorities accordingly. So we've seen expenses in those various departments go up 36%, but population went from 691 million in 2018 and is now 767 million, a 75,000 increase, or 11%. 11% versus 36%. An increase in housing went from 236,000 to 251,000, a 14,000 increase, or only 6.2%. So expenses are up 35%, or almost 36%. We've added 6.2% more in housing to build the pipes, to build the sewage treatments, to build the roads, to support our homeless, to do all of that. And the population has only grown by 11%. I think we've been funding this, our budgets and our staffing and our endeavors and priorities very, very well. And I commend that we've had a decrease in the property taxes this year on a percentage basis, but that dollar value is going to still be significantly higher. I'm going to buck up probably against 9,000 total once Ajax throws in there. And I'm calling on you to continue to do work. I know this is the preliminary draft, but we need more action that's relative to population and housing growth. I thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions for the delegation? Push your button, please, Councilor McCaughey.
Thank you for your delegation today. Are you familiar with what AMO has put forward to the province about accountability for prosperity and the review that we're looking at provincially?
I've heard a little bit about it, but
Okay. Well, I'm just going to encourage you to look it up because it speaks to all of the challenges that we're facing right now. And I really don't have a question for you. I just thank you very much for your delegation. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, your delegation.
thank you for allowing me to speak.
Members of council, there is no correspondence. Item number 7 is the report. The 2025 Regional Business Plans and Property Tax Supported Budget. Could we get a mover to get it onto the floor? Moved by Mayor Foster, seconded by Councilor Gerard. The item is now on the floor, and we'll look to the speakers list. First speaker is Councilor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think my comments are going to surprise any member of council or staff. I made the statement in the 2 previous budget rounds that I won't support any budget tax increase above the rate of inflation. I'm pleased that we're not at 7.59. That was unacceptable in the last term. I made some very strong arguments, I believe. I appreciate the strong support from many members of council for reducing it. The same issue is before us again. We have considerable billions of funds in our reserve accounts that I believe quite sincerely we should be using more of these during these difficult economic times to reduce the tax impact on Durham Region residents. I understand that the reason for the increase in spending. I support the increase in the police and transit. I think these are mandatory. I'm very appreciative of seeing a greater emphasis now on housing and homelessness support. But we're forgetting the other half of the equation. If the expenditures are necessary, then we can't simply download all the costs on the taxpayers. Mr. Chairman, you made a very fine comment earlier in the meeting, and I applaud you for it when you said that we as members of council have to make sure that the upper levels of government understand the impact of their decisions. I think that same comment applies to we here at Regional Council. We have to understand the impact of our decisions on the taxpayers that we are elected to represent. In today's economy, with housing costs, food costs, inflation costs, all spiraling into very difficult conditions for many in our community, even a 4.9% increase is unacceptable. I would hope that our staff would go back as they go through the process and find ways to use more of the reserve accounts and other options to reduce the overall tax impact to under 4%. One could argue for even more now that inflation is projected to hit 2% next year. But at the very least, we need to get that overall tax target down. I would be hopeful that we would do that today, but I'm not confident that the votes being present to reduce it at this time. But I do urge colleagues, as you're out and about, ask yourself the hard question: can you impose any more pain onto the residents of Durham Region? And it doesn't matter what income group you're in. Everyone is suffering out there right now, but especially those at the lower and fixed income range, like our seniors. They're getting 1% increases. People in our ODSP are getting a 1% increase. We heard today from our staff that health is getting a 1% increase, yet we're asking the taxpayers to pay 4.9. So I simply want to go on record as urging council to reduce that target. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request a recorded vote at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, recorded vote noted by request from Councilor Nicholson. Thank you. Mayor Foster.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I promise that my earlier comments covered most of the comments, but I do have a couple. I wonder, Madam CAO, if you can go to page 19 of 36, item 3.7. And it speaks to the recommended guideline, regional departments, boards, commissions, and other outside agencies. It speaks to accountability and responsibility. Might I respectfully suggest that you missed a key component, and the key component in that is council. So we see on a regular basis motions coming off of the floor of council that are in advance of or in addition to the budget. Those are items, and we have all done this, and we will all continue to do it because we need to. But those are items where, not necessarily with staff recommendation or staff knowing in advance, we are adding things to the budget. And we've seen that in the last couple of council meetings. And where sometimes these are necessary, we, members of council, the people bring them forward, as well as when we vote on them, need to be held accountable, and there needs to be transparency. Staff cannot take us to task. There is an uneven balance of power. I asked Ms. Taylor earlier and made a prediction. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket because maybe that prediction will help as well, that there would be a request to use reserves to reduce the tax increase. So, Ms. Taylor, I'm going to repeat. If we raid the bank account, particularly on operational items, what does that do to future tax increases or to the bank account?
So through the chair, you have two things. You're deferring an increase to a future year because it's an ongoing cost that's not going away, and you're taking that money away from injection into the capital program, which translates to greater debt and greater debt payments.
So we heard, 1% increase based on debt that we know that we need moving forward. We don't have enough money in the bank today to cover the requirements that we have. We as a council can come with guidance to staff to bringing this in. We could tell staff to write refund checks to members of the public. That's entirely within our purview. But if we're doing that, I think, we need to tell staff what we are cutting, which is fair. There are expectations of a level of service. To Mayor Carter's point, things that we maybe shouldn't be doing, perhaps they are there. But the public needs to know that services that they were used to getting, they won't be getting. And that is a fair discussion, an absolutely fair discussion. So I'll come back to, I do hope that we hear from members of the public as we look at the budget, what our strategic priorities are based on what we're hearing from the public. And again, our process is maybe a little bit backwards, but let the public tell us what they need. And it would also be helpful to hear what they do not need that we are doing, because we can get this under control. But again, I've got to thank staff. And again, my comments, each one of us has come forward with things that we want to see, and sometimes they're necessary. But Mr. Chair, each and every one of us need to be held accountable for these additional items that find their way, into the budget, expenses that weren't anticipated nor necessarily recommended by staff. And thank you.
Mayor Schumer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I want to thank staff, because I know there is a lot of work that goes into the budget each year. It's almost like they get out of one budget cycle and they're into another. And we all know it because it's the same in our own municipalities. So I do want to thank staff for the work in getting us to this starting point. And of course, the region has received many congratulations, many accolades for its budgeting and forecasting work. And of course, we enjoy a great AAA credit rating. But I am not supporting this increase for a number of reasons. First of all, I'm not a big fan of budget guidelines. I believe that staff should be coming to us and saying, this is what it's going to take to run this region based on how you want to run it. I'm not a big fan of guidelines, so pretty much regardless of the number, I probably would not support it. Secondly, I did not see anything in the presentation. I did not see anything in this report. But 6 months ago, so not a long time ago, folks, 6 months ago or so, we were warned about double-digit property tax increases coming, almost, for the foreseeable future. We went from 10, a target of 10 last year to, just over 7. And we were told 6 months ago that the reason that great accomplishment was achieved, not because anything was cut, pared down, or anything else, it was deferred. We were told that 3 points or so was simply deferred, because I brought it up at the meeting and said, well, pardon my language, what the hell are we going to expect in 2025? We just pushed 3% in. And I raised it at that point. So are we going to be talking about, 13% increases? And the Commissioner of Finance, she didn't give an absolute yes, of course, but she was kind of nodding her head like, yeah, that's the way we're going. But here we are 6 months later, and now we're talking 4.9. Sounds great compared to 7, sounds great compared to 10. But I want to know how that happened. We were told you are heading for property tax increase nightmares, and now all of a sudden it gets shaved back down. So I haven't seen anything in the report explaining that. I think we deserve to see that. Why exactly did that happen? We've got a report that says, yes, we're going to be using debt, we're going to be using reserves and what have you, but I haven't really seen why did things change so dramatically in 6 months, and I would really like staff to address that, because I find it hard to come to a starting point here when we haven't got an answer on how things have changed so dramatically. So I guess maybe that's my first question to staff is what happened in the last 6 months for us to go from double digits or worse to 4.9?
So if I may, through the chair, there's a number of things that I'd like the opportunity to advise on. The picture is no rosier. There are a number of things, and I'll talk about a few of them. Our goal this year was to try to find some way to give a little bit of window of relief. That does not mean that all of those things that we talked about 6 months ago have disappeared. We are attempting to smooth them over a longer time frame. We are attempting to pull in as aggressively as we can reserves and reserve funds. We have done a number of things like transit, it's 175, not 2. I have been, I'll say, aspirational about the police guideline, and I know that you will have challenges there. There are a number of other things that we know are coming. Sometimes it's timing. So, for example, in the budget 6 months ago, we received notice that the federal Reaching Home program funding is disappearing. It's disappearing next year. So there's $4 million that's coming out unless they've changed their mind in 2026. We have talked about last year that we did not make movements on roads. I still am not making the movement on roads that we should have. But again, we were trying to be as aggressively cognizant of the situation for taxpayers as we can. We talked about the debt carrying costs. We have not started building in that level of debt carrying costs. We've acknowledged this past year that that was going to be an issue. We have not started escalating that in. Again, I talked about transit. We've talked about the increases needing for housing and homelessness, and we were talking last year about both the amount of debt and the operating impact of bringing on more DLHC properties, for example. You don't see that today because we are still in the process of designing those facilities, the public comment, how are we going to bundle financing, how much, and then Elaine has spoken about this very often, how much can we manage to leverage from the federal and provincial government on the housing file, because that directly ties to how much operating costs we have to bring on stream and how much debt carrying costs we have to bring on stream. So those are also, so we've bought time by trying, Seton Long-Term Care, for example, we're trying to spread out that impact over even more years to bring it up to speed. And then the last thing I'll say is for Bill 23, we have not put an incremental increase this year, but it has not gone away. What the province has removed is the phasing, but we still have the issues with respect to the freezing and the discounts and exemptions. I have not allowed for that any increase in this year's budget, simply, and it's literally a timing issue, but I'm so cognizant of where council, my apologies to Elaine and the senior staff, we are so cognizant of the pressures on the public that wherever we could find a way to buy time in the hopes, for example, that the interest rates do come down and mortgages that are renewing are a little better off next year. So it's not that anything has gone away, it's that we've tried to find concrete areas where we could buy a bit of time, acknowledging what's going on in this coming year. I don't know if Elaine has some overall comments to add to that, but those are examples of where we've tried to do our best, and we will absolutely leverage as much reserve fund dollars as we can make work for 2025 budget.
I think Nancy did an excellent job in covering that, but I mean, the simple answer is we've delayed things as much as we can. We've stretched out implementation plans where we can, and we are continue to work aggressively to access dollars from senior levels of government to assist us with some of our key pressures in transit, social housing, and supportive housing.
Oh, okay, thank you very much for that, but I guess I'm going to now raise the same specter of danger I raised 6 months ago, because it sounds like a lot of what we accomplished, or staff accomplished through this, is again deferrals. So the 3% or so that deferred from 2024 is now getting deferred again and possibly more, which is, you know, the old term, kicking the can down the road. I don't think that's the responsible thing to do. If anybody wants to think political, yeah, how long are you going to do that until the next election? You got 2 more years. So what is that budget going to look like? But, you know, in terms of just being responsible, I do not think that is responsible at all. We either make the hard decision and say, you know what, forget deferring. We're just maybe going to have to cut or reduce something, whether it's capital projects, whether it's whatever. But this is where these guidelines get us into a lot of trouble, because we essentially force staff to kick a can down the road. And I don't think that's the responsible way to do it. Not sure how many, you know, members of council look at the region's financial statements. I look at them periodically, and I had a member of the public reach out as well. And, you know, there's a 2023, we had a big surplus on the financials. I know that's not the real surplus for us to budget with, but can staff address what the surplus, the real surplus with respect to our budgeting process would be in 2023 and where that went?
So through the chair, and this is very off the cuff with round numbers, I think our general tax levy surplus for 2023 was in the vicinity of $19 million. And a good portion of that, and I mentioned this in the report, we talk about discretion of the treasurer. So when things come forward that aren't included in the budget that comes to this floor, often those are the kinds of things, or emergency circumstances where there's a capital failure and something needs to be done. So when it's given to the discretion of me, we will typically utilize an in-year surplus if it appears. So for example, in rare circumstances, social services gets good news, and that allows for an in-year surplus in other areas. So we apply that to try to make sure that the next year is a little bit better. But it is from a regional $2.8 billion budget, that's a fairly modest surplus.
Okay, thank you. And I do, you know, acknowledge the risk of utilizing reserves. But in Brock, we have started utilizing our rate stabilization reserve against probable, unspent categories, because there's always some of them, right? We budget, we never spend, or we always underspend. And so we have started trying to allocate reserves in the budget for line items we're probably not even going to spend. So it's not like we're taking the expenditure out of the budget, we're just funding it in a different way, because it gets a little annoying when year after year you see these budget line items going in and it's never spent. And that's one way we use reserves in a strategic way, not just blatantly pulling it out, but actually identifying areas of the budget where, yes, we're budgeting, we're probably not going to spend it because we never have.
Mayor Schumer, your time's up.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
We
Chair.
are in the committee of the whole process, but you can put your name in to speak again. Just on the reserves last year, just for clarification, the $19 million, council approved a one-time expenditure from the police department for $7 million. Is that where that was funded from?
That's correct. Council did approve that expenditure. Again, discretion of Commissioner of Finance. As this year rolls up, we'll use a number of ways to including that surplus, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Brenner?
Very much, Mr. Chairman. Got a couple of questions to staff and then my comments as well. Through you to our staff, in terms of the revenue stream that's coming in from the casino through the city of Pickering, how have you factored that into the 2025 guidelines and where that money is projected, where you see that going?
So through the chair, the $6 million, assuming things go well at the casino, which it appears that they would be, the $6 million cap that comes to the region goes directly to the housing budget.
Thank you. And I think that's an important thing to note, because where Mayor Schumer was identifying, that money is assisting in terms of the housing component here in Durham region. And that's why I'm really pleased and proud of the fact that Pickering has stepped up. The second question that I have picks up on the question that the comments of Mayor Foster when he was identifying the impact on seniors and persons with disabilities, in particular, as being some of the hardest hit. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to our commissioner, several municipalities across the region at the lower tier level are currently and continue to provide tax grant rebates, I'm calling them tax grant rebates, to seniors and or persons with disabilities for the lower tier portions of their property tax. Do you happen to know which municipalities are currently doing that? I can definitely tell you the city of Pickering does.
Through the chair, I think there's 3, but I would not want to mislead you on exactly which they are. I believe that there's 3, and we typically report on that annually in our property tax report that comes in conjunction with the budget on some of those issues. I'll say to you, because of how we look at things like the housing supports, we try to target funds. So one increase this year that we're looking at trying to do is $1.8 million for rent supplements. So we try to put the money directly into those kinds of programs rather than grant-related programs. That being said, we are happy to include a section in our annual property tax report that outlines the status of the of seniors and assisted living kind of supports.
I think that would be very helpful as we get to that point, Commissioner. I guess I, like anybody that's sitting in this chamber, of course nobody is happy when there's an increase in our property tax. But I got to tell you, I think we'd be a lot less happy if we didn't, in fact, provide the necessary financial support to our housing file, our transit file, our policing file. And I'm only highlighting those because, yes, it is very difficult and challenging. But what about the role that we do have to play when it comes to dealing with increased crime, car thefts, increased hate crime? What do we say to the individuals if we were to give a direction to lower that target when it comes to our housing file? The City of Pickering has benefited, and I admit, we have the new type of transitional housing that we're doing on Third Concession. And I want to thank the region for the money that they contributed in 2024 to make it a reality. May not seem like a lot, but 7 individuals are coming off the street and will have quality housing with pride and dignity. What do you say to those people if we couldn't do it because the region didn't have the funds in the housing file? Transit. What do we say to the individuals that are already experiencing the impacts of not having the resources to be able to have our bus routes like 121A or be able to have full-day service buses on the new 118 White Road and across your own municipalities? We have a responsibility and we have a social conscience which is different than, unfortunately, what we see at the federal government and provincial government these days. And I agree with Chair Henry. There needs to be consequences for the upper tier governments who have responsibility. But it is our social conscience that enables us, I believe, to set these guidelines and do the right things so that we have some quality of life that is so critical and essential. Because those that are going to get hit the hardest will, in fact, end up on the streets. Do we need to strike that balance? Yes. Are we always looking for efficiencies? I believe our staff at the region do an excellent job looking for efficiencies. So I am going to be supporting the guidelines. I will keep a watchful eye as we get through the budget process at the right time. But I think our staff have done an amazing job in terms of capturing, as I say, the social conscience of Durham Region and what needs to be done to make sure that we are balancing. And the chair said not only just balancing a budget, but balancing the quality of life that is so critical across the region. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Miriam Pietri.
Good morning, everyone. I recall last year being extremely critical of the budget and the way that we weren't able to meet our target. This is a different outlook. A lot of work went into trying to do, I think, a balancing act between, and I think staff at finance would be able to tell you better. But I recall the conversations and I recall why I was critical, and I think that the conversations that we're currently having are going to evolve into individuals wanting either an increase that is higher, and they won't tell you because they want, and I think, the benefit of a number of projects in their community, and I get it. And then there's going to be individuals that, unless it's zero, will never, ever support the budget. And that is, an extreme on both ends that we're not able to satisfy. I want to say something that, hopefully resonates, and it's something that, it typically is said in the chamber, but it's one that's acted on. I think, with the support of our two representatives at AMO, as well as the chair working with federal members and others around the table speaking to upper level governments, hopefully they're not just understanding the pressures that municipalities like ours have, but understanding the need that our residents are foregoing as a result of their inability to understand, how to fund them. And I think that, when we consider how much is funded from upper level governments within the region of Durham, the criticism is, well, why don't you just stop doing the stuff? Why don't you allow them, whoever it is, provincial or federal, to do the work? We haven't found that they're willing to do that. I know that you, Mr. Chair, have spoken to them. I know that our representatives at AMO have spoken to them, and I think that unless that happens, we're not in a position where we can just say we can't do those, we can't provide those services. Another aspect of the conversation in setting this target this year is the fact that I think that a number of the projects that we talked about last year, which we thought would be deferred in hope that we could actually tackle in other years, are being looked at. And they're actively looked at, not only in the context of the budget, but also our reserves. So I get that some are adverse to looking at reserves, but I think as a taxpayer, the average person will say, those were dollars that came from, my property taxes, and they were placed in your account. And regardless of whether they're a reserve or something that, is allocated towards a budget, those are dollars that we'd like you to invest. So we're looking at reserves as well. It's not something that we've said we're not touching. And I think finally, you have to consider, we don't have a crystal ball, but we're going to be into some tough times, because I think we've already gathered that we are. And the target that's been set, although it's not zero, is one that I am very surprised with. I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, because someone will say, well, you're happy about an X amount of increase, because as Councillor Brenner indicated, and as I would confirm, I don't think anyone wants to increase anything. But the reality is, unless we get upper level governments to really realize what the priorities are for the average person and really commit to helping us provide those priorities, whether it be housing or services, we're in a position where I think staff and everyone around the table, whether it's through dialogue or whether it's through the work of finance, the dialogue of the political body, have done a responsible job in trying to set a target that I was, hoping that we would meet last year as a council member, because the recollection is that at the beginning of the term, we were looking at 5% targets. And if we were going to be in and around 5%, we could work with it. We weren't last year. And again, I was critical for that. And I think there were a number of others. But I fundamentally believe that if we can get to the point where the target is something consistent with what the expectations are in terms of service delivery and the project costs, then that's where we can then speak to upper level governments and say, listen, we're consistently here and we need you to be with us. And I think that's where we're going with this. So on that basis, I want to thank our staff and anyone who's spoken to the other levels of government to help them understand just how much work goes into providing services in our community. And especially to the service providers. We have transit, we have housing, we have fire and police at different levels. But these are services that are tangible. And so every day someone looks at us and says, I need your help with something. And we can't tell them that we're not able to provide it because we don't have the money. They expect it.
Thank you. Mayor Carter.
So almost good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm struggling with this. I'll be very frank and honest with you, and I'll tell you why. A couple of reasons is, yesterday, of course, I was heavily criticized in regards to supporting a project that would see us and ask the region to support an initiative in our great city that would see our tax base go from $23,000 a year to $1.5 million a year, which the region and, of course, the school board are entitled to 60% of that. Strategic investments to be able to increase revenue, to be able to make sure that we have those revenue bases coming in, very important. I still stand by and thank the members of council that supported us in regards to that yesterday. I'm going through the budget process at the city, and everything that we are based upon is health and safety. I've come to this council, this regional council, several times, and I've asked for your support in regards to unique challenges I have in my community. And the problem I have is I've got unique challenges that continue to grow, even with your support and your investment. And I'm going to keep on coming back and asking for more support and more investment. Now, if I'm going to do that, then I better understand where the priorities lie in regards to this budget process. And, right at this particular time, I'm still trying to do my due diligence in regards to the budget. And if I say that I'm going to support 4.9%, but I'm going to come back and keep on asking you for a 1% increase in spending in my community, you're probably going to take me out to the woodshed. So I have to really think about this very, very hard in regards to how to balance this. I understand about the affordability of residents and citizens across this nation. Financial irresponsible across this country is one of the biggest issues. Our federal government, I think, is somewhere around $3 trillion in debt, almost $90 billion in debt servicing charges. And I understand that we need to have a national conversation. But at this particular time, when I look at the budget, I have to think about health and safety. And where I'm struggling is I'm going to keep on coming back to you because I need more paramedic services. I need more policing services. I need more housing services. I need more outreach workers. I need more addiction and mental health services. I need that help because that goes to also the economic prosperity and safety and well-being of my community. I understand that I sit here as a regional representative, but I can't be the only one. I know that Ajax has unique challenges. I know that Clarington is starting to have unique challenges. I know that Pickering will see them. I know that all of our communities are going to be facing it, and we're going to continue to be able to say, are we having these strategic investments in these areas that are helping our community? So that's where I'm struggling, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the work that our finance department is doing. I appreciate everything that they're doing. I think Mayor Schumer has brought up some very good points. Deferral in regards to projects that really make a significant difference in our community. I don't have the perfect answer, but what I do know is the health and the safety and the well-being of our communities has to be the number one issue that we take into consideration. Emergency calls at 9 minutes is unacceptable, especially if I can't breathe. So I'm being very frank with you. I will continue to be able to support every municipality that comes forward to say, we can find a way of increasing revenue if you support us in regards to investments that make sense. If that means more employment or if that means building and you're going to increase your tax revenue because that's a good thing to do. That's fiscally responsible. But if any of the other mayors come to me and say that I need investments in health, safety, and well-being, I'm going to support them. I don't know where we're going to get the money, but we've got to. If we don't have healthy and safe communities, we've got nothing. Here's something for food for thought, and I can see that I'm running out of time, Mr. Chair. The province has said we're going to build 1.5 million homes, and everybody goes, that's great. We're all trying to meet these targets, right? We never had a conversation about what does Chief Chainsborough need in regards to extra paramedics and how many more vehicles and what's the extra cost? How about social services, policing, long-term care, healthcare? By the way, those 1.5 million homes come with individuals that have complex issues that we're going to have to be directly responsible for. So we always look at that gold ring and say, isn't that wonderful? And we push away the scenario in regards to, yeah, it is wonderful, but how are we going to support those residents that come into our community? And we've seen some of the initiatives that have happened in intensification in our own city right at this particular time. And we're seeing the complexities that come with that. So that's where I sit. I'll probably speak again, but thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to share that with my colleague.
Thank you. Mayor Schumer, I know you're on the list, but you have to come second time around, right? So Councillor McCaughey.
Thank you. You're a hard act to follow, Mayor Carter. Thank you for describing the rock and a hard place that we're all sitting in. And I think that I would, first of all, like to thank our staff for all the work that's been done on this, because I know it's not an easy task. When we talk about offending other levels of government, I understand the concern there. I really do, because AMO's been begging for for interaction and help, and we had literally no response to the request for a social and economic prosperity review at the convention in Ottawa. We continue to ask, and we continue to bring forward ideas. We just need that collaboration with the province. We really do, because this is about uploading those costs that have been downloaded onto us and that we don't have the resources other than property taxes to tap into. So I'm going to ask that, with this report and this target, which I don't think any of us are comfortable with increase in taxes. I don't think any of us underestimate how hard it is for people right now with renewing their mortgages and trying to make ends meet from month to month. But I'm going to ask that every member of council, not just the two of us that sit on AMO, really advocate for that review to happen. And if it's, if you have that connection with your MPPs, please advocate for that, because this is the united front that we can put forward within our region, but across the province. And it's about that shared messaging that we need this to happen. It needs to be collaborative, because I don't think they're going to give us money, in piecemeal forever. We have to have a plan, and the plan is not property taxes. But I will reluctantly support this for now, and hopefully we can get some better news moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am super happy to hear that Mayor Carter is willing to support our communities, because I recall your ask for $1 million from the region for your security. We submitted a bill for $500,000, and we have had $40,000 given to us. So I would love your support now. So I think that you're right. Like, we all have needs. We all have issues that need to be addressed. And we were told to submit a bill, and we did. So, I don't know where that lands in this budget, but, I could use the help of our regional council to receive that.
Thank you, Councillor Wu.
Yeah, and what are we at? Still good morning. Thank you, Chair Henry. A lot of discussion, great discussion, and we talked about and spoke about core services, looking at soft services, and I'm looking at the one compassionate services, and I think Councilor Brenner talked about the social conscious. And my fellow colleague in Port Perry, he mentioned about the refugees. And if I could ask to staff, refugee and asylum seekers, and that was brought up at one of our meetings, what is the cost of that? And I think where we are housing them, if I'm not mistaken, is hotels.
So before I go to Jonathan, I'm going to help you. So the cost to us last year, Jonathan, I'll look for a nod, was $1 million after we received the funding from the federal government. The challenge that we have is it's not dedicated funding. So, so currently, Jonathan, have we been remunerated for any of our expenses so far this year?
Yeah, so for this year, Q1, about 95% of our reimbursable costs have been reimbursed.
How much was that amount?
About 2.4 million.
Second quarter?
We're working on that. Yeah, they're a little slower.
Yeah, so it's all application-based, and it's all, I intend to speak to application. It's all time-consuming, and the information that has to be gathered in the reports are detailed.
No, and I appreciate that clarification and update. So did I hear? Now, we did talk about being made whole. In this case, 95%?
Well, last year we were not made whole. We got 95%. We probably would get hopefully the same amount this year.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that, so asylum and refugee seekers are getting about 95%, or let's just say covering. Where are we sitting at with what we're dealing with our own homelessness situation here?
The number is large. I'll start with our CAO.
It's not 95%.
It's a really, really tricky question to answer. So I'm going to look at it from the capital perspective and turn it over to Stella and Jonathan for the operating perspective. The key thing we need in order to get people out of encampments and off the street are places to put them. And we are working aggressively, provincially and federally, to try to get the capital resources to expand our social housing and to expand our supportive housing inventory. We are doing everything that we can. At this point, there are no programs open to which we can apply. We've been told they're coming in the fall. We will be ready, but that is where we are in capital terms. With respect to what we're doing to address it on the operating front, and in terms of providing capital dollars to community agencies who also operate and develop supportive housing, I will turn it over to Stella and Jonathan.
Thank you, Elena, through the chair. So our operating dollars, regional operating dollars, that means from the tax base, is 9.3 million. So that's above and beyond what we get from the federal government and the provincial government today. And that's to support our shelters, our hubs, our outreach teams, and then some in our community. So our by name list, though, has increased. We're at over 700, almost 800 people right now on the by name list, a tremendous increase from where we were last year. And I only anticipate that we will continue to see those numbers grow. In November, we're going to have our point in time count for homelessness. This will be a very interesting time for us, where we will have a 24-hour time frame where we will actually be counting, not we, but a team will be counting the exact number of people that they know in the community, not just the ones that you see unsheltered, but the ones who are couch surfing and in other areas. So we will have a better accurate count than that by name list that I mentioned earlier. So we need funding, and we don't have enough to support the community today.
No, and I appreciate, this response. And again, I think it was mentioned earlier about we're the only province where that has been downloaded to the social housing. Unfathomable that we're not getting the support that we need. And I think Chair Henry did mention about, and Mayor Schumer mentioned about election. So I think there's a federal election and a provincial election coming before the municipal election. And I look at some of those that may be running first time or are that already there, that started their journey at the local or regional level. And to remind them of where they came from, because some have forgotten. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shahid.
Thank you so much. Through you, Chair Henry, I'd like to thank the staff for working tirelessly on this number, and many individuals who came and spoke to us today, especially Mr. Glass, who spoke passionately about the pressures he's facing. I hear them. I hear everyone around the table, all of my colleagues here. I was very glad to see it's not double digit. It's way under 10 and under 5. It is the step in the right direction, and I really appreciate that, Nancy and your team. Thank you so much. But the fact is that both at AMO, where 2 of our representatives are doing a fantastic job representing us, and I was at FCM, I heard the struggles from coast to coast, and there were resolutions after resolutions pushing the federal government to do a lot more than what they're doing. There's below bare minimum. So there were motions of funding our shelters, and there were motions on making sure there is more money for the people who really need it. This year alone, we received many people, and I took a few meetings as well, who talked about our higher taxes and how they're struggling. And some of us are just paycheck away from homelessness. So although I want to support this budget target, but I would like to see what else any of us can pinpoint where we can somehow bring this 4.9 a little lower for people to see that we tried a little harder. And that's my request putting forward. I'd also like to see that if there was a magic wand, I would like to see provincial or federal government, now that this will be an election year, empty out their pockets and help us. And that's what my urge be. But in conclusion, I'd only like to thank our staff for really working with us. And like Mayor Schumer had indicated, it's not double digit, and we are all very happy. I'd like to see something that will move this number further down. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. I tell you, when I got our package and I opened it, I was surprised at the number. I won't say pleasantly surprised, because I would have been more happy if it was lower, like everybody else. But given, based on exactly what Mayor Schumer was saying and the facts that we had from last year, when we ended up with over 7 and we started at 10, I think that was good. The one thing I always find interesting in these budgets, and I've been here, although I've been at council for 12 years on regional council, I had a lot to do with budgets in my previous life, right, in trying to get money for the police and things like that, is we always want to have low taxes. But as Councillor Bremer and Councillor Marion Pietri said, is what do we need those taxes for? What are we spending them on? What are our priorities? If you look at this one here, right, almost 50% of the guidelines is police. And we were talking about safety of our citizens, all the complaints that we get, auto thefts, traffic problems, and all that. 50% of this guideline increase. The other, so it's about the other 50% is split between ambulance, housing, homelessness, and transit, with 1% of that, half of that half, going to transit. 1.75% increase to transit. That's the other thing that we always hear about here is we need more transit, we need better transit, because all those people out there, not just for gas, GHGs and things like that, but for those people that can't afford cars and have to get places throughout our region. We have a big region, and so we need a lot of buses and things like that. And then 0.5% basically, and I'm rounding up, right, for homelessness, and 0.5% for ambulance, right? And we know over the summer, right, as Mayor Carter said about the needs of our people and emergency services, over the summer we had and it's not just because we didn't have enough ambulances, the hospital's involved somewhat in there. We had a couple times over the summer where we had code 0, which is meaning there's not an ambulance available in the region of Durham. Then we go to all the housing that we're talking about and the development that we got, and we look at the demographics and the people that are moving around. People that are coming to Durham, but also the people that are aging here, right? And all the medical and fear of crime, safety concerns that these people have from those prospects of ambulance and police. And when we talk just quickly on that development yesterday, rental, it's not just affordable housing that isn't out there, it's also rental housing that's not out there. We haven't in the region spent a lot of money or a lot of development on rental housing. But the other point I make on this is that all the councillors want to have lower. They want to see how it can get lower, but nobody wants to make a motion to say, take this out, take that out, take that out. And when we come to things that staff over the year, right, have said to us things, I'll go back to the refugee thing. If we don't get the money from the federal government, then we're going to cancel the program. Oh my God, no, we can't do that because that's insensitive. We're a compassionate council. Well, wait a minute now. That's money that we have to spend from someplace if the federal government or provincial government isn't giving it. Where are we spending it from? Well, we're spending it from the only place that we get money, from property taxes. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want a 1% tax increase, and we're not going to do things that aren't, specifically a requirement of the regional government, and then turn around and say, oh, well, hold on a minute. We can't be, non-compassionate to these types of things, so we need to spend that money. And we've got these homeless issues, and we're not getting enough money from the next levels of government, so we're not going to stop those. We need to still do those things. I think 4.9%, would I like to see it at 1%? Sure, I'd like to see it at 1%. And we've already had the explanation of why we can't use more reserves, because that's just a recurring problem to add on to future tax bases. So 4.9% as a start. The presentation said as the cap, and I'm sure our staff are going to come forward, and if they can find other savings, they're going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, has Mayor Foster spoken to this? Okay, so now we're into order, second round. Mayor Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just I guess a question to staff, because, reserves have come up a few times, including many times in the report. Just how much are we drawing from reserves and reserve funds in this proposed budget, and how does that compare, say, with what we plan to do this year?
So through the chair, because this is a guideline, not a completed budget, we are essentially, I've quoted what we pulled last year, which was $321 million. That was a 35% increase from the year before. What we've done here is the anticipation that we are going to have to draw significantly from reserve funds. But this, what we brought before you today, is the ultimate tax levy cap. We will be using reserve funds to get there, and we've allotted a lot of reserve funds as the development of the capital programs are taking place. But we do not have a completed budget. So I don't have the exact number of how much reserves and reserve funds that we're using, but I can tell you that as the departments are getting these guidelines, that this guideline is allocated to them, they are given X amount of tax levy, and they are told you have to accomplish all of these things. And that's where all the reserve funds come into play, and then we roll all that up and we'll report it at the budget. So I can't answer your question today, but I can tell you that we have escalated dramatically and will continue to do so.
Okay, fair enough. And I'll ask you an even more loaded question then. How much are we planning to put into reserves? Do we have an idea, or at least, an idea of how much, say, more over last year?
So through the chair, and I'll ask Nicole to correct me if I'm wrong, right now we are not proposing any significant increases to contributions from reserve funds. There are flow-throughs. So for example, the $3 million for works, roads and bridges, the way the budget documents flow is we'll put that into the reserve fund and then budget to spend it in the same year. So that you would see that number reflected. But right now we are not looking at topping up reserve funds beyond things like those consistent things that have already been there. So there is, at this point, no new contributions to reserve funds.
Okay, and roughly, how do we stand as far as shortfalls on contributions to reserves, to deal with things like, obviously capital and asset management?
So through the chair, and we'll report more on this certainly in December, we did bring you the asset management report in June, and certainly there we tried to cash flow out impacts of reserve funds, and we'll continue to do so. So the obvious one is the one we reported on here, where we're essentially saying we need an incremental $4 million incrementally each year for the next 10 years to fund that forecast because of asset management needs. So there is a lot that's going to be required there as time goes by.
Okay, so that $4 million would fund us.
So that increment, so it's $3 million is what we're trying to fit in this year. Next year, we would need to add an additional $4 million. The year after that, we would need to add, so you're looking at 0.5%. I mean, again, very round numbers, 0.5% incrementally each year needs to go into the roads and bridges reserve funds to be used essentially at the exact same year to come back out.
Just be used at the exact same year. So yes. Sounds like we'll still be quite behind the 8 ball in any given year. And the reason I ask that is I'm coupling that with the fact that, once again, this number we've got has been achieved through deferrals. And, Mayor Carter mentioned it, a number of others have mentioned it about, we'll probably be coming back to you after the budget's even done and asking for more money. And the problem is we get into a state of complacency, thinking, well, it's only a 4.9, so surely we can ask for a little bit more. When in reality, last year we deferred 3. I don't know where we must be deferring now. It's probably around 7 or more percentage points. So we're deferring, and a lot of operating, a lot of capital, and we're not even funding asset management by the sounds of it on a long-term basis. So, yeah, I think if we're going to see these deferrals happen in the budgeting process, we should have something put before us where we're approving it, that we understand just how much has been deferred. Because it's great to say, oh, only a 4% increase. Yeah, but what's being masked is the fact that there's another 7 or 8 of a ticking time bomb coming down the road. And if a member of council comes before this body this year and says, well, I'd like another % for my municipality and to deal with this, chances are that's going to be an ongoing %, and it just adds to that nightmare. And someday this nightmare is coming due, or a very hard decision is coming due. So I think if we're going to do this, if we're going to play this deferral game, we should have that in front of us. The public should have that in front of us, or in front of them, so that they know. You know, yes, we're only bringing in 4.9. Doesn't it sound great? But, you know, you're going to keep living in Durham in 3 or 4 years. Get ready for a nasty wake-up call then. So again, I'll just say, you know, let's have all the information in front of us when we go to make these decisions, because there are certainly going to be some decisions down the road. Thank you.
Mayor Foster.
Mr. Chair, I've already spoken. My intent was to wrap up as I move forward.
There's only one more behind you. Councillor Lee, first time. Councillor Lee, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you. I want to thank Councillor Chapman for what he said. It's absolutely true. You know, it's one thing for us all to say we want lower taxes, but then not present anything. So, you know, this council shouldn't be surprised by my stance on our consistent funneling of money towards our police service boards, when I truly don't feel that we are seeing that reduction in crime or the advanced services that, you know, they're being promising. And right now they're actually asking for like another 94 full-time for uniformed civilian, 74 frontline and divisional leadership. I think that's a big ask, considering there's still much to be done with bringing back anyone on long-term leave, anyone currently on suspension, which we discussed yesterday, is about 28 people. I think there's an opportunity there for them to trim their budget and go through the same experiences we're going, rather than asking for a blanket ask. And Chair Collier said it yesterday, that's going to be a minimum ask, and they want even more than that. And for us to say no. So I have an amendment to the clerk. I don't know if he received it or they received it or not, but it's just to reduce the 9-some odd % ask from police budgets and drop that to 5%.
Okay, Councillor Lee, just give me a moment.
Yep.
Clerk's gonna have to put it on the screen.
And we're still getting the feedback from the system.
So when you're not speaking.
Oh, the feedback I can't explain. I apologize.
So.
And I believe Regional Councillor Cook will be seconding. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, it was up and it's gone off.
Sorry, it was up and it's gone off my screen.
Okay. It's on the screen Mr. Clerk, it's on the screen in front of me. Is it on yours, Councillor Chapman? Can I just get a nod? That's the only way we're gonna get it up on the screen. Okay, there we can see it. I'm gonna need to hear from Councillor Cook if she's.
I'm gonna need to hear from Councillor Cook.
Councillor Cook, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Are you seconding this motion?
Yes, sir. I would like to support an increase of 5% that Councillor Lee is proposing.
No, he's not increasing it by 5%.
No, he's amending it to be an increase of 5% rather than the proposed 9.
9.25.
Correct.
Sorry. Give me 1 second, please. Yes, please. I'm going to have the clerk ask for clarification, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the benefit of
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the benefit of all members.
Councillor Lee,
Councillor Lee, is the intent of the motion to reduce the.
Councillor Lee,
there we go. I think that's better. Councillor Lee, for the benefit of all members, is the intent of the motion to reduce the net increase to the police budget from the proposed 9.25%, I believe, down to 5%?
Correct. So I guess the full amendment would be to change recommendation BI to an increase of 5% from 9.25 currently.
Thank you.
Councillor Cook, could you push your request to speak, please? Councillor Cook, you're aware of what the clerk just had clarified?
Correct. Yes, he's asking for a reduction from 9.2 to 5.
Okay, and you're seconding that?
Correct.
Okay, members of council, amendments in motion, it's on the floor.
Amendments in motion, it's on the floor.
Chair, can I speak on that very quickly if you don't mind?
As the mover, but
Councillor Lee,
you have to get your system.
Before the next council meeting.
I have to, pardon, one more time?
So there's a problem.
With your system on your end.
So put yourself on mute.
And you'll be able to hear me.
So when your system is active, it feeds back through our system here. So you'll have to work through the clerk to get your system fixed before the next meeting. Okay, Councillor.
Okay, I'll do that. I apologize for any feedback.
Councillor Lee, you have the floor.
Just very quickly, I think, if we are talking about priorities, I think homelessness and housing is absolutely a priority, and we're saying that across the board. I think transit's a priority, and we're saying that across the board. I don't think my constituents are truly asking for more police presence. I understand the chief's presentation yesterday. He listed a lot of very good cases, but I think under the current economic restrictions that we're all facing, I think considering the pure amount of officers on part-time long-term leave, the amount of officers on suspension, I think there's an opportunity for them to work on their current base to bring them up, because I think the chief said it many times, if we bring all those officers back, they will not need a single additional new member of the police. So I think this is a great place to start, and I would appreciate council support. Thank you.
Councillor Cook, as the seconder, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Cook?
Thank you, Chair Henry. Yes, just briefly, to validate what Councillor Lee has offered, I do think that is a reasonable request as a place to start. We've all noted that we're making hard decisions this year, and homelessness is certainly top of mind and supports for our budget and transit. Transit we hear a lot about. So something has to give somewhere. Is it not a valid option to look at all of the aspects of increase across the board? And if we can make an adjustment as an opening start within the police budget, it does not mean we are not increasing the police budget. We are asking them to be cognizant of some of the points that Councillor Lee has already mentioned that I won't bear to repeat. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. In the speaker's order, Mayor Foster.
Mr. Chair, that's to wrap up on the main motion, not to the amendment.
Okay, sorry. Councillor Brenner?
Thank you. I'll speak to the amendment, Mr. Chair. I understand the logic that the mover and seconder have put forward, but I also understand the reality of the situation. We sat here at a committee of a whole yesterday and we talked about the importance of looking at increasing police resources when it comes to hate crime, cyberbullying. There is not a chance that we would be able to move that forward if we cut back the increase that is being suggested. And I'll ask for a recorded vote
On the amendment?
on the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wu?
No, thank you, Chair Henry. What I was going to bring forward, but again, we already have a motion on the floor. I was going to ask for a motion to divide B out of the main motion, but that'll come after we deal with this.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to the amendment? Seeing none, a record, it just popped up. Sorry, Councillor Chapman.
That's okay. I was looking for a page in the report here because I'm looking at this and I, as Councillor Brenner said, I understand what they're trying to do and cut things, but the equation isn't more police, crime will go down. It's the complexity of what the police have to deal with today. I mean, there are certain things. For example, years ago, when I was a young officer, and that's a long time ago, when you arrested somebody for impaired and you took them in for a breath test, they did the two breath tests almost simultaneously. Do one, and they did another one because they had to have two breath tests. Now I believe it's 22 minutes they have to wait between the tests. So that's two officers that have to stay off the road for those 22 minutes. The breath tech, who has to do it, and the arresting officer, who has to remain with his arrestee, right? The other thing is, if you cut that much out of it, then all you're getting back is to the base pressures, basically, right? The approval that we gave to, that the police board gave and that we supported to additional officers and additional resources in the 2024 budget that were half years and now have to be funded for the full year. Plus, we all know that there'll be contract negotiations and how much that's going to be. Plus, we all know that benefits go up, and that will barely cover to make them even. And as we heard yesterday from the chief, the changes in the Community Safety and Policing Act has some other things that have to be done, not nice to be done, have to be done. So this additional, the 4.25, I'm hoping that it can be done within then. The other side is, yes, there are officers that are off on various disabilities and injuries and all that, right? You know, an officer gets hurt, it's not as easy as saying, hey, listen, you need to come back to work and we're going to find a job for you, right? The reason they're off is because they can't work, right? For a number of reasons. Medical, sometimes it's emotional, mental. I'm a pretty strong guy, emotionally and mentally, but if I told you some of the scenes that I saw over my 31 years in policing, some of you guys would cringe. And there are officers that affects more than others. So them being off and just saying, hey, we need you back here, so you got to come back to work, it doesn't work that easy. And unfortunately, the chief has to fill some of those vacancies with other officers, or perhaps he'll have to take all the policing out of Ajax because he needs to meet the standards for policing in the rest of the region. So I obviously can't support that. I think I understand what they're trying to do in my comments about if you want to cut down the guideline, then make a motion, but this isn't the motion to make. Thank you.
Mayor Carter.
I think Council Chapman did a tremendous job in regards to bringing to light some of the challenges with policing. And because of his experience, I lean on it a great deal for insight. Just some of the changes that have happened with this new Community Policing and Service Act will take officers off the road for 4 days instead of 2 days just for training. So take that into equation. By the way, you know, this council supported the body-worn camera program. the significant investments and legislative requirements and the amount of resources that are necessary to be able to implement that program are astronomical. Astronomical. And that's not officers on the streets. That's technicians sitting down and have to make sure that the footage is correctly, that people are not subject have to be taken out of the equation. We're talking massive investments. There's absolutely no way that I would ever support this.
Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. I am cognizant of what my colleagues are trying to do, and in principle, I would support it, but to give a percentage amount, I wouldn't do that. I would just say I hopefully they're doing what families are doing, they're doing what our staff are doing to look for savings and to try and bring the budget down as much as possible. I would encourage them to do that, and I hope they're doing that as well. And I leave it at that.
Mayor Schumer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be supporting it for the same reasons I mentioned earlier on the main motion, but, Councillor Chapman mentioned 22 minutes of time being consumed on a drunk driving investigation call or whatever. But yesterday we heard our officers are spending close to 2 hours at the emergency room. So that puts 22 minutes into the into shame. I'll just throw it out there. There's another bill you can send the province, I guess, if they're not going to properly fund the ERs. Then we're spending 2 hours at a time. Our officers are just waiting in the ERs. So there you go. Thank you.
Councillor McCaughey.
Thank you, Chair. I believe yesterday we supported looking at additional funding for anti-hate. So I'm a little confused where this is coming from. And frankly, I've had more interaction and more requests for policing in the last 3 months than I've had in the last 2 years. It is escalating, and this scares me to consider hamstringing them. So I can't support this. Thanks.
That exhausts the speakers list. The recorded vote was called on the amendment. I'll call on the vote now. Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to bring up the wording again. Finance has given us the full numbers.
Okay. Okay. Just before the vote's cast, the clerk wants to post something on our screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finance has provided the full numbers to the amendment. I'm going to show that on screen so everybody has a picture of that.
So everybody is aware what the reduction would be. Okay. Mr. Clerk, I'll call that vote now on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on the amendment is starting now. Looking for Mayor Barton online. Second call for Mayor Barton. Last call for Mayor Barton, connected remotely.
So the amendment loses. We're back on to Councillor Lee. You were the last one before you introduced the amendment. No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Miriam Pietri.
Procedurally, I'm not sure. Call the question, but I'm seeking to call the question.
There's no other speakers.
Okay, thank you.
So we're at that point before we call the vote. Members of council, just before is there a recorded vote on this? Yes. The recorded vote was called. Just before we go into this, Councillor Wu.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Henry. Is now the appropriate time to ask that we divide B from the main motion.
Which page?
Page 16 of 36, and that's report 7.1.
So, sorry, let me find 16. So you want to, so there's A, B, C, and D, you want to,
Divide B from the main motion.
and you just want to vote on it separately?
That's correct.
Okay, does it need a seconder on division? Mayor Carter, members of council on division, we'll call the vote. Calling a vote. Just put your hand up. All those in favor? Yeah, opposed? Okay, 3 opposed. Okay, so before we do this, and I'll just finish with my comments, and then I'm going to call the vote. Members of council, first of all, to the staff for preparing the budget, I want to say thank you. But for the work that you put into the application process to get the monies that we need and the hundreds, if not thousands of hours that are spent, I just want to say thank you. Today, we're missing members of council because they're out in their communities, Mayor Watton, Mayor Collier, Mayor Ash, because today is their day where they raise money in their community for things that aren't covered by any level of government to support their communities. And I know that all the other mayors in the room and members of council do the same thing. But I also know that members of council, when you call in and you ask a member of staff to do something, whether it be in works or health and social services, and there's a cost attached to that, it flows up to the CAO and to me. And I know that during the year, there are a number of members of council that will call and say, I just need this, can you find it within your budget? The work that we do behind the scenes to make that happen is unbelievable. And as we brought a budget forward today, you know, we all want to see lower budgets, but as it comes to committee, that's your opportunity to pull something. If you want to pull something out of the budget, then pull the item in your committee and then talk to your committee, and if you can get it through committee, then it comes to the budget process, and that's the way you do it. And that's the way it should be done. So I'm going to call the vote now. I'm going to call for a recorded vote on A, C, and D. Then I'm going to call, that vote has already been called, and then I'll call for a recorded vote on B. Mr. Clerk, on A, C, and D, I call that vote now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Record a vote on parts A, C, and D, starting now.
Is there lunch in the back? Okay, so A, C, and D carry. I'm going to call the vote on item B, recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on part B, starting now.
That carries. Members of council, there are no motions. There are no confidential matters. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Chapman, seconded by Mayor Foster on adjournment. Lunch is in the back. All those in favor? In opposition? I was in favor. In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. A big thank you to all staff present in the room for the great work they've done to get us where we are right now.